Welcome to Showdown. I'm Mark Kaysen, and it is Thursday, and that is the 26th of September, and I don't have the exact thing. I don't know if it's 41 days or 40 days or anything, but you know what? Probably tomorrow it's 39, so we're close enough. This is all just about over for Donald J., who is so funny. You know, he's run around the country telling everybody that he's winning all his cases and that everything's going to be thrown out in appeal and no one has to worry because he's got it under control. You know what? This guy's got nothing under control. Absolutely nothing. For example, today he had to deal with trying to fight against that $500 million verdict in New York. And I can tell you that it's not looking too good for poor Donald. Now, it's not finalized yet, but he's in trouble. He's going to pay that money. They're not going to reverse it. These things don't get reversed that easily. Donald did some really bad things. It's called fraud. And they caught him, and they put him on trial, and he's going to pay. It's just the way it is. You know, here's a guy who's running around the country talking about starting a war against American companies. He wants to fight against American companies. That's certainly an America First idea. He wants to take on Deere, charge them 200%. For what? Because he doesn't like the way they're doing business? Well, you know what? That's not how it works in the United States. We have laws. And plus, you've got to win an election. And I can tell you right now, Donald Trump is not winning this election. The numbers keep coming in, and every number is worse than it was the day before for him. I understand. If you get your news from Fox or one of those other crazy fake networks, you probably think that Donald's polls are going through the roof, that Kamala is a crazed communist and we're going to execute her, and, you know, all this kind of stuff that he tells people. And whatever he tells, his people believe it. Why? I can't tell you. I can't tell you why they're that dumb. But I can say this. If they would think about what's happening here, they might take a look at the price of DJT. Because if they took a look at DJT, they would understand that there's a problem. And I'm not just talking about DJT. I'm talking about the problem that Donald's got. Because, you know, he doesn't have any money. He's broke. He's been broke for a long time. And that's pretty funny in itself because, you know, he collects a lot of money from the United States government, money which he swore he would not take, but he was lying. What a surprise. That's all he does is lie. So anyway, he takes all this money from the United States government. He takes millions of dollars from just people. Millions of dollars. Many of them probably, I'm not in their homes, but like, you know, with Tammy Faye Baker, I'm sure they've got a nice can of dog food. They can salt it a little bit. And they eat the dog food and they send Donald $1, which is all they've got left because they had to buy the dog food. But it doesn't matter because they wouldn't care what happens to them as long as they help Donald J. Trump. They love him. They really do. Of course, if you're eating dog food, you can imagine your education level. And so that's part of the problem too. But let me say this. Donald wants to take on Deere and Company. Well, he should have done it in the first term because there's not going to be a second term. He's already said, although, he lies, but he's already said he's not going to run if he loses. Now, I realize he'll probably try to run anyway, even from jail, which, by the way, he wouldn't be the only person that's run from jail. We've had people who have run from jail. So he can do that. He can be just like Lyndon LaRouche, who was another nutcase, or he could be like Eugene Debs, who was actually an American hero, a great American hero, who received 1 million votes in jail because people loved him for the right reason, because he was out doing what he had to do for unions in order to try to make sure that workers got a chance to earn some decent money. And then for that, the United States government popped him in jail. Well, they also didn't like his opinions about World War I. So, okay. So they popped him in jail, which, is highly illegal, but they did it. And I assure you that Debs didn't care because, Debs was sort of like, how about Liz Cheney? Yeah, an American hero. Not like Donald Trump, who's an American stooge, who actually is a stooge for Vladimir Putin, who is another brilliant guy, who I guess he didn't go to Wharton, but he learned his tricks of the trade in the Soviet Union, which, of course, disbanded a number of years ago, like 30. And again, some people understand these things. We had some great American diplomats, George Kennan being one, who said in 1947, an article that he wrote for Foreign Affairs magazine, which he signed X because at the time he was an ambassador to the Soviet Union, and he didn't want to reveal who he was. But at any rate, he said, stop worrying about the Soviet Union. They are completely incompetent, and if you give them some time, they will blow themselves up. They're not going to bother anybody else. Just keep them in the Soviet Union, and eventually they'll be out of business, which they were 30 years ago. 1990, so from 1917. Hey, they had a 73-year run. That's great. Hey, Donald's got a 78-year run going. That's really impressive. But no, look, Vladimir Putin uses Donald Trump. Uses him. And Donald Trump is just a stooge, and he's happy to be used. Now, there may be some reason for it, and I assure you, we are going to find out. This is not like the Kennedy assassination. We are going to find out exactly why Donald Trump has caved in to Vladimir Putin on everything, given him secret documents. By the way, we saw him hand over the documents. We watched it in the White House, in the Oval Office. They brought in the journalists from Russia. They took pictures, everybody high-fiving as Donald turned everything over. And then Donald looks around like, I didn't do anything. No problem. Of course, people that we were doing business with around the world were freaking out over the fact that Trump was sitting in the White House revealing information to the Russians. He's a stooge. Vladimir Putin has had no difficulty working him. And like I say, there may be a reason. There may be a really good reason. But whatever that specific reason is, I just want to point this out. The overall reason is simple. Just go take a look at DJT. You'll understand. Everything this guy touches dies. He is just a bad person. He lies. He makes it up. And he doesn't even care about what he's doing. You know, I was talking to somebody this afternoon, not long before I came up here. And what we were talking about is that Donald Trump could have been president of the United States. And the way he could have done it, he could have just faked it. I mean, I know he's a psychopath, but he could have faked it. I don't know, for 6 months, just acted like a regular human being. That's all. Wouldn't have taken much more than that, because there are people in this country who would have been straight behind him all the way to the voting booth. They wouldn't have cared if Donald could have shown that he was a real, live human being. Things like, I'm sorry, or excuse me, or is there anything I can do to help? I mean, things like that. I mean, we all know he can't do that. All he can do is talk about Haitians eating dogs and cats, which, by the way, there are people all over Ohio right now suing him. And by the way, in order to sue somebody, you have to have damage. Well, they've got damage. I mean, they've got people that were removed from hospitals. They got kids who couldn't go to school. He has caused chaos throughout Ohio because of a lie. And that's not going to play well in a courtroom, which, by the way, Donald has been in court and he's lost. He knows what it's all about, but it doesn't scare him anyway. He doesn't care. He will lie over and over again because it's just what he does. Like I say, go look at his stock. DJT. $80 a share. He had almost $10 billion. Now he's down to almost nothing. It was down to $12 a share the other day. And then it had a little bounce to 14 after no one offered to sell the shares, which was considered to be good news. Stock rebounded to 14 and a fraction. Now it's in the 13s again. Headed for 1. And even if it didn't hit 1, he's already lost 90% of what he had, because that's what he does. He loses everything he's got. This man is a loser. You know, there's a book. It just came out recently. It's called The Lucky Loser. That's a true story. It is. Go look it up. Get the book. It looks interesting. I already picked it up. You know, it's really easy to buy books. You just go to your Kindle app and you just buy the book. It's cheaper on Kindle anyway, and they deliver it right away. I mean, I like the hard books, the hardcover books, but, you know, sometimes you're on the run, so you pick up a book on Kindle, and if you really want it in hardcover, you just go buy it. But anyway, Donald is destroying himself, and that's good. And he wants to try to destroy America, but he can't. He would like to put tariffs on everything across the board, 20%. Just making up numbers. He's not going to do anything because he's not going to be the president of anything except the Prisoners Association. But I am saying that he would like to put some tariffs on. He'd love to throw a 200% tariff on Deere and Company. Honestly, what did Deere do to him? Well, the answer is nothing. But maybe his puppeteer out of Moscow, maybe that guy said, throw a 200% tariff on Deere and we'll mess up American agriculture. I don't know. Whatever it is, it's not good. Let me talk to you about Ukraine. And the thing about Ukraine is that the United States made a deal with Ukraine. I've talked about it before, but go back to the deal because this is where all this comes from. In 1991, after the Soviet Union was gone, there were nuclear weapons, like 1,400, sitting in Ukraine. And the Ukrainians didn't even know how to use them. I mean, they couldn't have lit off a firecracker if they wanted to. They didn't know how. And they also didn't know how to dismantle them. They didn't know how to do it safely, that's for sure. So the United States and Ukraine talked it over. And here's what the United States said. They told Ukraine, if you give us the nuclear weapons, we'll dismantle them for you in a safe fashion. And then we promise, if anybody messes with you, we'll protect you. The reason for that promise was because Ukraine agreed to hand over the weapons. Because, you know, if you're a nuclear power, it's a little hard for people to mess with you because they don't know what you're going to do. So you don't want to take a chance trying to attack people with nuclear weapons. And Ukraine is aware of this. So they said, okay, we'll take the deal because we don't want to blow up our bombs while we're trying to dismantle them anyway. And they figured, you know, the United States says we'll protect you, then they'll protect them. So here we are in 2024, and the United States is honoring its arrangement. Well, it means nothing to Donald. Nothing at all. Because he doesn't honor any deal he makes. And he certainly didn't want to honor any of the United States deals. I mean, he was ripping them up faster than he could figure once he walked into the White House. Iran and climate arrangements and anything he could get his hands on. NAFTA, he didn't care. And that's okay because we did survive it. And I always said during the time that it was going on that somebody needed to come back in and put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And as it turned out, our man was Joe Biden, and he did it. He put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Donald's not going to get another chance. You got to understand, these polls, they're not perfectly accurate, but they do have a trajectory. You can follow the direction in which they're going. And there's no doubt about it. The polls everywhere are moving in the direction of Kamala Harris. Everything she does is right. Now, I know there are people on the right who say that everything she does is terrible, that she's a communist. They call her all kinds of names. They say she's stupid. But here's the problem. It's not attaching to her. You could say what you want, but the lady has absolutely lit the country on fire with inspiration. She just has. And it's not like she's done anything that's fabulously exciting yet, although she has spoken very professionally. She's done a great job. I've talked about that perfect political pitch that she's got. It's perfect. And you could say, Kaysen, you're nuts. But the problem is the reaction is exactly what I'm describing. You can say those people are nuts. You can say everybody's crazy that follows her. But when she wins, then what are you going to say? Oh, I know. We're Texas. We're seceding from the Union. Good luck. There's no one going to secede from the Union. I mean, you can pretend that we're on the verge of a civil war. We're not going to have a civil war. Anybody that jumps up and says they're coming after the United States government is going to find out that that's illegal. And they're going to end up in the same place that the January 6th people are in right now, which is called jail. They're there. They're in jail. They don't get a deal like Donald Trump. Donald can run around and say, I'm special. The Supreme Court says I'm immune. Well, not exactly. He's got some immunity. But it's not for everything. It's certainly not going to save him from the $500 million that he's going to pay to the state of New York because he's a fake, a fraud. Nor is it going to save him from the $100 million that he's going to end up paying to E. Jean Carroll because he's a rapist. You know, it's so much fun to say these words because there was a time when you really couldn't accurately say it. There was a time when you had to say innocent until proven guilty. And I believe in that. That's fair. In the United States, you are innocent until proven guilty. I have said to my students in high school, I've said, look, if somebody comes in here and beats me up, and you're all witnesses, I've asked, are the people that come in and do these things, are they innocent or are they guilty? And the kids all say, oh, they're guilty. And I say, no, they're innocent. Because in the United States, we're innocent until proven guilty. Just because somebody saw it, that doesn't mean anything. Eyewitnesses get things wrong all the time. Well, no, not all the time, but they do. They get things wrong. And look, this poor guy in Missouri that they just killed, they murdered him. They say that he killed somebody, but they don't know. And there's plenty of evidence that suggests they didn't do it. And could they wait a little bit longer? They've waited, what? I don't know, 20 years? Could they wait a little bit longer just to find out what the real truth is? Answer, no. They had to kill him. And they did. And all these people are running around saying he didn't do it, including the prosecutors. I mean, when the prosecutors say you didn't do it, come on. And then there's Donald. The prosecutors say he did it. The jury says he did it. And he did it. So what else are we going to say? He did it. Greg says it's a shame the mattress tag police haven't caught up with Trump and his hotels. I'm sorry. That one goes right over my head, Greg. I don't even know what we're talking about. I don't know about the mattress tag. I do know that, and it's one of my favorite stories, is that Donald had the piano tuner come in and tune all the pianos in Trump Tower. And when the guy was done, Trump told him to go take a hike that he's not paying. Simple. Donald doesn't pay his bills. Donald lies. It's very simple. Everybody's explaining it. And, it doesn't take anybody to convince the millions of people who are going to vote for him in order to make this right, because there aren't enough millions. There aren't enough millions to cover the millions who are going to vote for Kamala Harris because they like her. And, maybe they love her because, well, she's normal. So that's the first thing. And I have to tell you, she says things that even I don't like. She's not perfect. She talks about protecting the border. That's horrible. What do you mean protect the border? From what? There's nothing happening at the border. Tell people the truth. They cross the border. They get in here wherever they can, and then they hide. They don't want to do anything. They want to get a job. They maybe want to send some money back to their families. They want to take care of their kids or whoever they brought here with them. But basically, they're hiding because they don't want Donald to deport them. But they're not doing anything. So, Kamala could tell the truth, but I get it. She's afraid to tell the truth because if she said the people coming across that border are nice people who aren't causing any harm, well, she couldn't win dog catcher. That's the truth. Because Donald has convinced millions that if you cross the border, you're a criminal. Mental institutions, you're killing people, you're eating dogs. Oh, come on. It used to be Mexicans. Now it's everybody. Haitians, you name it. I heard the tape of him saying that the blood of America is being poisoned by African immigrants. African. What do you think that's about? He's not talking about Norway. This guy is the worst scourge that has ever hit this country. Some people go back and say, there used to be a left-wing guy like him in the 1930s, which there sort of was, and his name was Huey Long, governor of Louisiana. And his slogan was, every man a king. And using that, he was trying to whip up all these people to follow him, and they were, till some member of his family offed him. And it was because he did bad things to the family. I mean, that was a bad guy. But listen, Donald is far worse. And if you're not sure, do yourself a favor, because you might learn something and really enjoy it. Go online and put in Huey Long, and then put in you can put in PBS. That'll work. Huey Long, PBS, and you'll get an hour-long or hour and a half long documentary, and you're going to watch it and go, wow, guy's sort of like Trump. But that's sort of like Trump. No one's Trump. No one's that bad, but he was bad. If he hadn't gotten shot, I don't know. He might have actually challenged Roosevelt. But the funny part about that is that instead of it being some crazy public person, this was his family who did it. And they did it because they had a grievance against the guy. And like I say, he wasn't a very good guy. I mean, there are bad people in the world, and some of them lie, like Donald Trump. Okay, what else I have here from Greg? He says, they have gone after Trump for everything. Why not? Because it's illegal to remove mattress tags. And with all those hotel rooms, there's got to be a few beds missing their tags. Well, here's the thing, Greg. Funny enough, except it sort of downplays how important his real crimes are. Because this isn't about mattress tags or anything even similar. It's not even about piano tuners. It's about raping a woman in a department store dressing room. Who does that? That's criminal. I know it happened so long ago, it was beyond the statute of limitations. But, E. Jean Carroll was smart enough, and so was her lawyer. And they came after Donald, and they got him. But the funniest part of it all is they got him for $5 million. But Donald couldn't keep his mouth shut. So before he was done, it was up to $90 million. And with interest, it'll be $100 million. He's not going to get out of that. And he is a rapist. And so then you have to wonder, why are there people, women, running around the United States supporting a rapist? Again, convicted. Okay, the word is libel. But he was liable because he was found guilty by the jury. So, convicted, that's good enough for me. And the judge said a rapist. So I'll go with the judge. Now, in addition to that, he is a convicted felon. Now, that's a fact. The man is a convicted felon. You may not like what he was found guilty of doing. And you may think that the trial was some kind of a sham. But the problem is that it wasn't. The trial was perfectly normal. And the evidence was overwhelming. And Judge Mershon has said that if you take out some of the evidence that you probably shouldn't have allowed in, if you included the new story from the Supreme Court, he said that the jury would have still found guilty. And you can say, well, how does he know? Relax, guys. This is the United States of America. There are rules. If the judge says that that's the result, that's the result. I mean, if the judge looks at the case and says, if you take out all this other evidence that we shouldn't have let in, it would still have been the same decision by the jury, then that's it. The judge has that latitude. This is the United States of America. It's not Russia. We have our rules. And those are the same rules that apply to everybody. So, when Donald runs around causing chaos in America, he's really doing it to himself. Because if he'd acted right, there are millions of people out here who would have been taken in by it and who would have voted for him. I mean, I have no doubt about that. No question about it. The problem is, and this was said earlier by many people who knew him, that he was so angry that he couldn't contain himself. And that's true. He has not been able to contain himself. He's a wild man. He's out of control. You know how they say unhinged? Now, he's sick. But here's the thing. His sickness soon will not be our problem. And as soon as it's not our problem anymore, I'm going to change in the way I view all this. Because I have what we call empathy for people. And if you're just a regular person who is walking around as a psychopath, see, I don't go in for all this let's get revenge. Revenge is not a very good thing at all. It's really a complicated idea that can cause lots of problems. The best thing you can do is absolutely stay away from it. Now, Donald has no concept of that because he's mentally ill. And the reason I know he's mentally ill is because his niece, who is a psychologist, she knows better than anybody what his problem is, and she says that he's mentally ill. Donald says she's just got sour grapes, presumably because he stole all the family's money and they just don't feel real good about it. And I can understand why they might not feel so good about it. There's some pretty disgusting stories about what Donald has done to that family. Not nice. But anyway, that's our guy, Donald. Somebody was asking me the other day, why does anybody follow him? What got them into this? And here's the thing. I've told this story many times myself too. You just go take a look at Marcus Welby, MD. Robert Young. Now, Robert Young played a part on television that a lot of people really liked. They enjoyed that show. They liked Marcus Welby. They trusted this television doctor. But then I always ask, if Robert Young showed up at your house and you had appendicitis, would you allow him to operate? And of course, the answer is no, because Robert Young wasn't a doctor. Well, Donald Trump starred in what they call a reality show. The problem is those shows aren't exactly reality. They're even scripted. So the whole thing is that Mark Burnett made a hero out of Donald Trump with a TV camera. Pretty simple. Sort of like you thinking that Marcus Welby could jump out of the TV set and cut out your appendix. You wouldn't want it, nor would you want Donald running your business. Because listen, everything he runs ends up either bankrupt or sued by the government and then fined millions of dollars, or all of the above. Do I have to remind you about the Trump University? The Trump University. Isn't that crazy? Who would even let those words come out of their mouth? The Trump University. And I feel sorry for the people who signed up for the Trump University and were ripped off, although the government did step in and fine Donald $25 million for ripping people off. But there were people who were certainly harmed by it and never restored in any fashion. But again, it's the law. We do what we can do. Sometimes the law can only go so far. Luckily, in this case, the law has gone far enough. It really has. Rape conviction, fraud conviction against the state of New York, against insurance companies and banks. 34 counts of felony in the city of Manhattan. We did a good job. We didn't get everything, but we got a lot. Now, it's going to be up to Marshawn as to whether he puts Donald in jail or not. I don't know. It's going to come after the election. He might put him in jail. At that point, we don't really need it. At that point, he really needs a hospital, which is where he should have been all along. Sorry. Okay. I'm going to stop worrying about such sad tales for a minute, and I'm going to talk about where you can get a great meal tonight at Wendy's in Chesterfield. 18,000 Chesterfield Airport Road, and I promise you, you are going to love the wings, the smoked meat, the pizza, the salads, the hamburgers, cheeseburgers, patty melts with lots of onions. You're going to love the baby back ribs, and you're going to love the onion rings, and you're going to just love Wendy's. It's a great place to eat. I was over there the other day visiting Ben, and I can tell you the place was jammed all the way up to the ceiling, and everybody was having fun. Just a great place to go. And if you want the same terrific food, just down the road in Defiance, Missouri, you can go to 2999 South Highway 94 and enjoy the same great food at Wendy's. Now, jewelry, you can get it at 4506 Hampton. That's Jewels on Hampton. You walk inside and you find out right away why this place is so important when it comes to jewelry. It is filled with cases of jewelry. Really nice, very nice jewelry. And of course, you've got Al and his son AJ there, and they can design jewelry for you. They can follow your designs that you bring to them. Doesn't matter. They do everything. Just an excellent place to go and like I say, you can buy jewelry, you can buy and sell. That is, you might want to sell your jewelry to the Jewels on Hampton group, and they, in turn, they'll make deals with you on all kinds of things, including coins. They do coins and jewelry. It's really a great place to shop. And on top of it all, they fix watches, and they're really good at it. So if you got a watch that you value and you need it fixed, nobody else can do it, go to Jewels on Hampton. They will handle your time problems. 4506 Hampton, that's Jewels on Hampton. And if you just come right back down the road to Clayton, you'll come to the St. Louis Suit Company, which is on the corner of Forsyth and Central in Clayton. They've got great suits and shoes and shirts and overcoats, which you're going to need for the cold weather. I have to laugh. I wore my overcoat the other day when it was raining, and then I haven't even taken it off since then. It was cool for a couple of days. Today it was hot. I mean, I've been caught in this before. You're sort of in the middle. I fill my pockets with my wallet, with my keys, all kinds of junk, and so I don't want to throw it away and start over again. So I just leave everything in there and walk around with my overcoat. But you can get a great overcoat at the St. Louis Suit Company, and if you're getting married, you can get great wedding attire too. From Jay and Nick and the whole family, they're all together there at the St. Louis Suit Company, and they'll do everything for you. When it comes to men's clothing, you're just going to love the St. Louis Suit Company in Clayton for 30 years. Finally, if you want great Italian food, and I mean great Italian food, you're going to go to Telena's. It's in Creve Coeur. It's on the corner there, just beyond 141 and Olive, down from the Deerbergs. A lot of other shops there. Telena's is so good. 40 years. Everybody knows Telena's. A lot of times people don't even realize it's still there because they went to Telena's on Skinker and they have a little mix-up. But I can tell you right now, it is terrific. With Mehdi over at Telena's. You'll love their food. Sure, they've got, eggplant and all that other good Italian food, veal, lots of Parmesan, all good. But none of it is like that spaghetti and meatballs. Their spaghetti and meatballs, just phenomenal. And I've always described Friday, that's tomorrow, as spaghetti and meatballs day at Telena's. But I'm sort of on the high side of my weight right now, and I'm not throwing all those calories down, so I don't think I'll do it tomorrow. But I'm getting there. So I'll soon be right back at it with those spaghetti and meatballs at Telena's. You'll love it. They also do catering for all kinds of food that they have. Everything they've got, they'll take it out to wherever you are, and they bring these big orders, and they're just a lot of fun. Everybody loves it. They love it inside the restaurant. They love it outside the restaurant. They were going there during COVID because, Mehdi was a smart guy and took really good care from a health standpoint to make sure that his patrons were in good shape. And they were. They loved Telena's, and you will too. Okay. So let's come to the end of tonight, although I say the end, 14 minutes away. But let's look at Ukraine for a minute. I started off talking about Ukraine, but let's look at what Donald is saying. Now, I told you the story about why we have an obligation to take care of Ukraine. There's a little more to it. Obviously, Ukraine is right next to Poland. Poland is NATO. The United States is heavily invested in NATO. We love it. Not Donald, of course. I mean, Donald doesn't care about the fact that for the last 78 years, we have avoided World War III because NATO doesn't take anything from anybody. Don't mess with NATO, because if you do, they will defend themselves. Of course, the only country they've ever defended was the United States, which was right after 9/11. And the amazing part about that is Donald's got nothing but complaints, but the truth is that NATO was there for us. They didn't have to do much, but they just stood up and said, we're here. That's under Article 5 of NATO, where NATO says that if you attack one member, it's the same as attacking everybody. And as a result, people don't attack NATO. And even Putin, look at him. I mean, he's over there beating the hell out of Ukraine to the extent he can get away with it. But he isn't touching NATO. He comes up right to the edge, and then he stops. Because, aside from the 500,000 troops that are sitting there from all the different NATO countries, aside from all that, NATO's got some firepower. And here's the deal. Nobody, and I mean nobody, can win a nuclear war. You can't do it. Nobody can. Because if you light off those firecrackers, then the other side will light off their firecrackers. And when it's all over, everybody will be dead unless you actually find a shelter somewhere. And honestly, I think that's bunk too. I don't think there is a shelter. Not that will protect you from 50 megaton hydrogen bombs. So, yes, NATO works. And yes, Vladimir Putin is frightened, but not frightened enough to stay out of Ukraine. Okay, so Donald, and this is just yesterday, he's such a genius. He says, Ukraine could have made a deal with Putin. And according to Donald, it could have been a bad deal. And that would have still been okay. A bad deal would have been fine, according to Donald, because he says right now, Ukraine is gone. It's been destroyed, and it's over. Of course, that's not true. It has been leveled to a large degree. But then again, so was Germany at the end of World War II. And what did we do? We took all of our money and we rebuilt Germany. And I can tell you right now that we're going to rebuild Ukraine. And if you're out there right at this moment and you're thinking to yourself, what could I do to make some money over the next 10 years? I'll tell you what you can do. You can go to Ukraine. Now, I don't mean go tonight. It's a little dangerous. But if you just go to Ukraine when the war is over, the money is going to be flowing in Ukraine like you've never seen. That place is going to be rebuilt from the ground up. It will be a palace among cities. It really will. The United States will go a long way with all of its great money. We got money. We've got weapons and we got money. And we'd rather spend the money. To tell you the truth, we would. And I don't know, at that point, maybe it'll be AOC as the president, but she, as well as others, would, depending on who's the president, but anybody would, rebuild Ukraine. It's simple. You send all the Americans over there, you rebuild the place, you make Americans wealthy because all that money goes to Americans. Even now, the weapons that we give them are weapons that are being bought from the United States. So that money is actually coming to us anyhow. And of course, you've got Republicans running around screaming that the money is going to Ukraine and they're throwing it away and stealing it. But no, they're using it to buy weapons from us. But you got to love Donald because he's telling it the way it is. He says that he could have made a deal that would have been better than any deal that anybody could have made with Ukraine. And he says, look, and he said this, by the way, he says, look, you could give some land to Russia. I mean, you wouldn't get everything, but you'd give away some of the land and Russia would get the land and Ukraine would have its land and nobody would be dead and everything would have been fine. You just turn over the land to Russia. Everything's perfect. It's only one problem. You ever hear of Neville Chamberlain? I mean, that was the whole idea with Hitler. Just give him a little Czechoslovakia. Come on, big deal. He'll take Czechoslovakia, a little land where the Germans live, and you'll never hear from him again. So they made the deal. I guess we never heard from Hitler again. Well, I mean, except for if you count the 6 million Jews and millions more all over Europe and all the chaos and destruction that man caused after Neville Chamberlain made that nice little deal where Hitler would just get a little bit of land. No big deal. This is Adolf Hitler. He's telling you. Believe him. Trust his word. Just give him a little land. Everything will be fine. I wonder if they said at the time, you've got nothing to lose. You ever heard those words before? You've got nothing to lose. That's Donald. Just like he says to the people in New York, who he says are going to vote. In fact, he's doubled and tripled down on it. He said it once, you'd think he'd just go away somewhere because you know he's not going to win New York. Not even close. He's going to be annihilated in New York. But he's saying now to the people in New York the same thing he says to the people in Ukraine, the same thing he says to black people. He said it last time. You've got nothing to lose. Just do what I say. You have nothing to lose. Well, almost nothing. Nothing but your life. Nothing but your money. Nothing but your integrity. Nothing. You got nothing to lose. Just do whatever Donald says. He'll take care of you. Just like he'll sort of take care of the piano tuners in Trump Tower. He'll take care of you just like that. It is unbelievable with the words that come out of his mouth that anybody's going to vote for him. And here's why I say that. Try this one on. Just take everything that Donald says, everything, and put it into Kamala Harris's mouth and let her utter any of those words. Be the end. They'd have Joe Biden back there in 10 seconds. No, really, seriously. Think about it. The things that are said by Donald Trump, think of if Kamala said any of it. They'd want to put her away in a mental institution somewhere, and they'd never let her out. They would hear it, and they would say, this lady's crazy. But when Donald says the exact words that would get her put away for life, oh, he's just doing the weave because he's a genius. That's what these people think. That's what the people who will vote for him believe, that he's doing the weave. I mean, why don't you call it the rope-a-dope? But actually, the problem is that when Ali did the rope-a-dope, it actually worked. He knew what he was doing. Donald doesn't know what he's doing. All he can tell you is, what have you got to lose? You've got nothing to lose. Just do what I say. Just follow my recommendations. I'll take you where you need to go. And remember this, my Christians, you'll never have to vote again. Oh, my Christians, I love you so much. Go watch it. It's pathetic. So he goes on and on about how he loves you, Christians, and he will take care of you. Oh, he'll take care of you. The same way he took care of DJT. He'll take good care of you. You've got nothing to lose. Just do what he says. It'll all work out fine. Turn over half the country of Ukraine to Vladimir Putin. You've got nothing to lose. It'll be fine. New York, vote for Donald. You've got nothing to lose. Where does he get this nonsense? And again, the shame of it is for him. I mean, for us, thankfully. But the shame for him is if he'd have gone the last 6 months, you know, he thinks he's an actor. If he'd have acted for the last 6 months, just pretended that he was a human being, I assure you, he'd have fooled millions. And he would be walking into the White House next year. Instead, he's going to go to jail where he belongs. You belong, however, at Wendy's or Jules on Hampton or the St. Louis Suit Company or tomorrow, Telena's for spaghetti and meatballs. And right now, I'm Mark Kaysen. This is Showdown. Good night.